Emil came on our honeymoon and locked me in a separate room so she could sleep next to her son like in the old days. But the next morning, they burst into my room and she screamed, "How dare you!" 11:47 p.m. I'd been married less than 24 hours and I was already spending my wedding night alone. The lock clicked on the other side of the door, and for a second I told myself I'd imagined it. Then I heard the shower shut off in what used to be our room. I heard Tyler cough. Then I heard her. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Linda decided she wanted the adjoining room." Decided. I stood there with my hand on a doorknob that no longer answered to me, in a $200 robe I'd bought for a wedding night that was happening 40 feet away, without me. I waited for my husband to ask why his wife would choose to sleep alone tonight, of all nights. He didn't ask. The TV came on instead. I heard Eleanor laugh at something, easy, satisfied, and it carried through the wall like she wanted me to hear every second of it. Maybe she did. I want to tell you I pounded on that door. I didn't. I sat down on the edge of a bed that wasn't mine, in a room that wasn't mine, on a night that was supposed to be mine, and I opened my laptop, because by then I already knew something Tyler didn't. I'd been building a file on his mother for 3 years. I just hadn't told him it had a name. I'd been a paralegal at Voss and Whitfield, a family law firm in Tampa, for 6 years when I met Tyler Ashford at a mutual friend's barbecue. 6 years of drafting interrogatories and indexing exhibits will make you suspicious of anyone who seems too easy to love. Tyler was easy to love. He held doors without making a show of it, asked follow-up questions like he actually wanted the answers, and cried a little at his best friend's wedding without trying to hide it. My last relationship had ended because a man forgot my birthday 2 years running. Tyler remembered the name of my childhood dog by our 3rd date. For the first 8 months, it felt like winning something. He called his mother every Sunday at 6 p.m. sharp, which I thought, in the beginning, was sweet. Eleanor Ashford met me for the first time 4 months in, at a restaurant she picked, and ordered for Tyler without asking him. "He gets the salmon when he's stressed," she told me, folding her napkin like she was closing an argument. "You'll learn." I laughed it off. Everyone's mother is a little much, I told myself, but there was a pattern underneath the charm, if you looked. And looking for patterns is the one professional habit I've never left at the office. Tyler's father had died of a heart attack when Tyler was 14. In the 18 years since, Tyler had become the entire architecture of Eleanor's life, her weekend plans, her emergency contact, her explanation for why she never remarried. "He's all I have," she told me once, smiling, like it was a compliment to both of us. My own mother, back in Ohio, had given me a key to her house when I turned 18, and never once let herself in without calling first. I understood grief. I didn't understand why Eleanor's came with unrestricted access. She'd had one to Tyler's apartment since before I moved in. "For emergencies," she said, though the only emergency I ever saw her handle was refolding his towels a specific way. When we moved in together, the key came with us, unmentioned, unreturned. It sat on her ring next to her car key and her office key, and every time I saw it there, I told myself it was a small thing. Small things are easy to swallow one at a time. I swallowed a lot of small things over the next 2 years. This is the story of the ones I stopped swallowing, and the 6 months in which I learned exactly how much a spare key can cost you, in dollars and otherwise. The first real crack showed up on our 6-month anniversary. Tyler had booked a quiet Italian place downtown, candles stuck in old wine bottles, the kind of waiter who doesn't rush you. We'd been seated maybe 10 minutes when Eleanor walked in, unannounced, in a green dress she'd apparently bought for the occasion. "I couldn't let you two celebrate without me," she said, already pulling out the 3rd chair. 6 months is a milestone. Tyler's ears went pink. "Mom, this is kind of a nonsense. I'll just have the branzino." She waved the waiter over before Tyler could finish his sentence, ordered a glass of the same Chianti we'd picked for our own toast, and settled into the 3rd chair like it had always been set for her. The waiter glanced at me, a small, apologetic glance, the kind service people give when they've clocked a situation faster than the people inside it have. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a mother excited for her son, a little tone-deaf but harmless. I told myself that through the whole dinner, while Eleanor recounted in detail the story of Tyler's birth, and Tyler laughed along like it was the first time he'd heard it instead of the 40th. On the drive home, I asked him gently if he could talk to her about giving us space. "She just misses my dad," he said. "It's not that deep, Linda." I let it go. That's the part I'm not proud of. How many times I let something go because fighting it felt disproportionate to the thing itself. One dinner, one favor, one small door left open, just a crack, because closing it all the way seemed cruel. I didn't know yet that Eleanor didn't walk through cracked doors. She measured them, and came back later with the right tools. The second crack came about a year later. On a Tuesday, I got off work early. I opened our apartment door to the smell of lemon pledge, and found my spice rack rearranged alphabetically, my throw pillows switched to the correct side of the couch, and a load of Tyler's laundry folded on our bed in the specific quarter fold Eleanor swore by. My laptop, left open on the kitchen table that morning, was closed and squared to the table's edge. I walked through the rest of the apartment like a stranger casing my own home, the bathroom towels rehung so the monogram Eleanor had gifted us faced out instead of in. My reading lamp moved 2 inches to the left, a grocery list in her handwriting stuck to our fridge with a magnet that wasn't ours. Eleanor was in the kitchen, humming, wiping down a counter that was already clean. "You scared me," I said, which was true, though not in the way I said it. I let myself in. in. I brought Tyler's dry cleaning. She held up a claim ticket like evidence. I didn't touch anything of yours, if that's what you're worried about. I looked at my alphabetized spice rack. I asked Tyler about the key that night. He rubbed the back of his neck, the tell he'd had since I met him. She's had it forever. I don't even think about it anymore. I do, I said. Every time I come home. You want me to take a key away from my mother after everything she's been through? I didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound cruel out loud, so I didn't give one. But the next morning, before work, I quietly called our building's front office and asked what it would cost to rekey our unit. $210. I didn't do it. Not yet. I wrote the number down instead in a note on my phone titled simply Eleanor, the same way I'd title a case file at work. It was the first thing I ever wrote down about my mother-in-law. It would not be the last. The third crack was the one that should have ended things, if I'd been braver, sooner. Tyler and I found a condo in April, a 2-bedroom off Bayshore with a water view neither of us could really afford. We were $40,000 short on the down payment we wanted, and Eleanor offered to cover it as a wedding gift early. Tyler was thrilled. I was cautious, and then I was outvoted, because saying no to free money from your future mother-in-law months before your wedding is a special kind of impossible. The mortgage required a gift letter, standard paperwork stating the money was a true gift, no repayment expected, because lenders won't fund a down payment that's secretly a loan in disguise. Eleanor signed it at the closing table. I remember her signature, enormous and looping, and thinking, stupidly, that a signature like that meant something. I found out what it actually meant months later, entirely by accident, doing something I do at work almost daily, reading a document from the back page forward instead of the front page back, because that's usually where people bury the parts they hope you'll skim. Eleanor had asked Tyler to hold on to a folder of wedding paperwork for her, mostly guest list drafts, she said. Buried in the middle of it was a second document, a promissory note dated the same day as the gift letter for $40,000, payable to Eleanor Ashford upon sale or refinance of the property or at lender's discretion. Tyler's signature was on it. Mine wasn't. I'd never seen it before in my life. My hands went cold before my brain caught up with why. I read it 3 times, standing in our kitchen still in my work clothes, bag still on my shoulder before I trusted my legs enough to sit down. I know exactly what a document like that means, professionally. It means the gift my future mother-in-law swore to a federally regulated lender was, in fact, an undisclosed loan, the kind of thing that can unravel a mortgage, depending on who ends up reading it and when. It also meant that no matter what happened between me and Eleanor for the rest of our lives, she would always, on paper, own a piece of the place I was about to call home. I thought about every file I'd indexed at work where an in-law's generosity turned out to have strings sewn into the lining, how it always started as kindness and ended in a courtroom, how the clients who came to us years too late all said some version of the same thing. I didn't want to make it weird. I confronted Tyler that night, document in hand. He looked, for the first time, genuinely afraid. Not of me, of what it meant. I didn't think it mattered, he said. It's just Mom. She wasn't going to actually call it in. That's not the point. The point is, she has paper that says she can. He promised we'd deal with it after the wedding, fix the title, get her name off everything, do it properly. I believed him because I wanted to, and because the wedding was 6 weeks away, and I didn't want our engagement to end over a document instead of a dance. I filed the promissory note in the note on my phone. It had grown to 4 pages by then. The fourth crack came 3 weeks before the wedding, and it was almost funny, in the way small betrayals often are before you add up their total. I'd scheduled my final dress fitting for a Thursday at 4. I showed up to find my appointment gone from the system, not canceled, rescheduled to the following Tuesday, by a woman who said she was the mother of the bride. I am not the bride's mother. My mother lives 4 states away and has never set foot in that boutique. I stood at the counter in the half-hinged dress I'd need to be refitted into in 17 days, feeling my face arrange itself into the practiced neutrality I used at work whenever a client lied to me about assets. The seamstress, apologetic, showed me the note in the system. Rescheduled per request. Mother wanted to attend the final fitting and Tuesday works better for her. Eleanor, it turned out, had also called the florist to ask about switching the centerpieces to navy and gold. The family colors, she explained later, meaning her own wedding, 34 years earlier, to a man who'd been gone nearly 2 decades. The florist, thankfully, had called me first to confirm. When I brought it to Tyler, he sighed the sigh he'd started giving me every time Eleanor's name came up, a sigh that had begun, sometime in the last year, to sound more tired of me than of her. Can you just let her have this? He said. It makes her feel included. It's not going to kill you to move a fitting. It's not about the fitting. Then what is it about? I didn't have a 15-second answer to that, and marriages, I was learning, run on 15-second answers more than anyone admits. I tried talking to Eleanor myself once, calmly, at her kitchen table. I told her I wanted her at the wedding, genuinely, but that I needed her to go through me for anything involving my own wedding day. She cried, not loudly, a controlled, dignified cry, the kind that makes you feel like the problem in the room. I just don't want to lose him, she said. You have to understand what it's like, giving your whole life to someone and watching them need you less every year. I left her kitchen that night feeling like I owed her an apology, instead of the other way around. That was the part I underestimated longest. Not what Eleanor did, but how good she was at making her control feel like grief, so that anyone who pushed back looked cruel by comparison. The 5th crack came the night before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, in front of 40 people holding champagne. Eleanor stood up without being asked, tapped her glass, and gave a toast that started sweetly enough. Tyler as a baby. Tyler's first day of school, before it curved somewhere else entirely. He used to have nightmares, she said, dabbing at dry eyes. Terrible ones, after his father passed. I'd sleep in the room right next to his, door open, so he'd hear me if he called out. I did that until he left for college. Some bonds don't really end, they just change shape. She raised her glass toward me, smiling. I'm sure Linda will understand that in time. The table laughed, uncertain, the way people laugh when they're not sure if they've just witnessed something sweet or something strange. My sister Kayla, 3 seats down, caught my eye and mouthed what the hell behind her champagne flute. I gave her the smallest shake of my head. Not now, not tonight. The same signal I'd been giving people about Eleanor for 3 years. Tyler laughed too, refilling his mother's glass, missing it completely. Afterward, walking to the car, I asked him what she'd meant by in time. She's sentimental. Weddings do that to people. He kissed my forehead like that settled it. I let it go because it was hours before I married him and I didn't want to fight to be the last thing we did as an engaged couple. That, I understand now, is exactly the math Eleanor had been counting on the whole time. That there's always a reason tonight is the wrong night to say something, until eventually there are no nights left before the thing you didn't say becomes the thing that happens anyway. I didn't know yet that she'd already called our resort 2 weeks earlier and requested the adjoining room to our suite, in case the newlyweds need anything. I wouldn't find that out until much later, from a very patient hotel manager with a printout, a date, and a timestamp that made my stomach drop for an entirely new reason. We flew to the Cortez Bay Resort outside Naples straight from the reception. 4 days, ocean view suite, the one indulgence we'd paid for in advance. We had maybe 2 hours of it uninterrupted. Tyler ordering us mimosas we barely touched, the two of us on the balcony watching a heron work the shallows, my new ring still catching the light in a way that made me keep glancing down at it like it might not be real. I remember thinking stupidly that the hardest part was over. Eleanor was not invited. Eleanor came anyway, that same afternoon, wheeling 2 suitcases through the lobby like she had a reservation. Surprise, she said, walking into our suite like she already had a key, which it would turn out in a way she basically did. Tyler went rigid beside me. Mom, what are you doing here? Making sure my only son enjoys his honeymoon properly? You two have never traveled internationally before? We're in Florida, I said. She didn't look at me. She hadn't really looked at me in 3 years. That evening, she cornered me in the hallway outside our suite, already in her robe, like the conversation was a formality. Tyler gets anxious in strange places, she said. I used to sit beside him until he fell asleep. He rested better knowing I was there. He's 32. Some bonds don't expire just because a woman buys a white dress, dear. She opened the door to the adjoining room and gestured inside, like she was doing me a favor. You can sleep here tonight. No, this is my honeymoon. You need to leave. Her smile disappeared for exactly as long as it took her to recalculate. Don't make Tyler choose between peace and your pride, Linda. Then she stepped back through the connecting door into my suite and pulled it shut behind her. The lock turned. I stood there with my hand on a doorknob that no longer answered to me, which is where I started this story, so I won't make you relive all of it. I'll just tell you what I did instead of what I wanted to do, because it matters for what came later. I didn't pound on the door. I opened my laptop and pulled up the resort's concierge chat, because our package included a private garden breakfast the morning after the wedding, flowers, a violinist, a photographer, a small cake that Eleanor had already made us postpone once, calling the original schedule too rigid. It was paid for either way. Could you please set up our honeymoon breakfast tomorrow at 8, exactly as arranged? Of course, ma'am. Photographer and violinist included? Yes. I looked at the ring on my finger. Still unfamiliar, still mine. Then I typed one more line. Please set 3 chairs at the table. I also did one more thing I hadn't done in 3 years of small, forgivable moments. I took a photo of the locked adjoining door, time-stamped 11:52 p.m., and saved it in the note titled Eleanor. It wasn't a list of spice racks anymore. It was starting to look like an exhibit list, and some tired, professional part of me had already started numbering the pages. At 8 a.m. sharp, hotel staff knocked on the main suite to set up the private honeymoon breakfast. I heard footsteps a full minute before my own door opened. Eleanor came in, still in her robe, waving a printed confirmation like it was evidence of a crime. Tyler followed, pale, wearing yesterday's shirt. How dare you, she said. You arranged some kind of spectacle behind our backs? Breakfast, I said. The breakfast we already paid for. The one you postponed. She shook the paper at me. It says 3 chairs. It does. Her mouth curled, satisfied, misreading me completely. So, you've finally accepted that I belong with my son. I picked up my purse and walked past both of them. The table's waiting downstairs. The garden was exactly as promised. White flowers on the arbor, a violinist near the fountain, our small cake on its stand, a photographer already adjusting his lens. 1 round table, 3 chairs, set the night before, at my request, exactly as I'd typed it. Eleanor arrived first in her sun hat, already claiming the center of the frame. Well, she said approvingly. Not bad. Tyler followed, eyes moving between the two of us like a man trying to solve in 30 seconds a problem he'd been avoiding for 3 years. Eleanor reached for a chair. I got there first. I put my hand on the 3rd chair and lifted it, the legs scraping loud against the stone in the quiet garden, and carried it away from the table step by step, every eye on my back. The photographers, the violinists, my new husbands. I set it down by the hedge, alone, facing nothing. Then I walked back, put my hand on the chair beside mine, and looked at Tyler. Yesterday, someone else decided where your wife wife belonged. This morning, you decide where your marriage begins. Nobody moved for what felt like a full minute. Then Tyler sat down next to me. Eleanor stood by the hedge for a moment, alone with the empty chair, before she turned and walked back into the resort without a word. I want to tell you that was the end of it, that the empty chair fixed something, that Eleanor drove home humbled, and we never had a problem again. It wasn't, and she didn't. Eleanor doesn't lose gracefully. I learned that for certain 4 days later, when we got home and found out exactly what a woman like her does with a promissory note when she feels cornered. We'd started a refinance before the wedding, the fix Tyler promised, the one meant to get his mother's name off the condo's title for good. Our loan officer, Priya Nair, 11 years in mortgage lending, had us locked into a rate for 30 days to give the paperwork time to clear. We had 5 days left when we landed back in Tampa. Priya called the morning after we got home, her voice careful in the specific way people get careful right before delivering bad news for a living. "I need to flag something before we can move forward," she said. "We received a letter from a woman named Eleanor Ashford. She's claiming the $40,000 down payment was a loan, not a gift, and that she's owed repayment before any refinance can legally proceed. She's included a signed note. I already knew which one. She's also asked us to place a hold on the file," Priya continued, "pending resolution. I have to take that seriously until it's resolved, even though the original gift letter on file contradicts it directly. If it isn't cleared up in 5 days, we lose the rate lock. That's roughly $18,000 over the life of the loan, plus we'd have to reapply from scratch. $18,000. 5 days. My mother-in-law had turned a spare key and a wedding gift into a countdown timer over my own kitchen. Tyler went white when I told him. She wouldn't actually do this. She already did. He called her on speaker without asking me first, which told me something too. "Sweetheart, it's just a formality," Eleanor said, warm and unbothered, like we were discussing dinner reservations instead of a hold on our mortgage. David felt, given how things went at breakfast, that I should protect my interests. That's all. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. You're threatening our refinance, Mom. I'm not threatening anything. I'm asking for what's mine, the way any mother would. It was a gift. You signed a letter. A pause, then lighter. Letters can be revisited, sweetheart. Feelings change. Maybe if I'd been included a little more in this marriage, none of this would be necessary. It was the rehearsal dinner toast again, dressed in different clothes. Control repackaged as love, right up until the moment it cost you money. I didn't yell. I didn't even really feel the urge to. Something colder and more useful settled into place instead. The exact feeling I get at work when a case stops being emotional and becomes a matter of which document beats which document. I opened my laptop for the second time in a week and started pulling every file I had on Eleanor Ashford. This time, I wasn't building a note on my phone. I was building a file for someone who could actually do something with it. I brought everything to Patricia Voss the next morning. The gift letter, the promissory note, Priya's hold letter, the time-stamped photo of the locked door, even the boutique's reschedule note, though that one was more color than evidence. Patricia had been a real estate and family law attorney for 14 years, and she was also, not incidentally, the partner I'd worked under for the last 4 of my 6 years at the firm. I'd filed exhibits like this 100 times for other people's lives. I had never once expected to hand a set across my own boss's desk. Patricia set her reading glasses down and looked at me a second longer than the documents required. "How long have you known?" she asked, not unkindly, the way she'd ask a junior associate how long a filing deadline had been sitting unaddressed. "About the note specifically? A few weeks? About what it meant since the day I read it?" She nodded, like the answer confirmed something about hiring me 6 years ago that she'd apparently gotten right. She read the gift letter first, then the promissory note, then read the gift letter again. "This is the part your mother-in-law didn't think through," Patricia said finally, tapping the gift letter. "This isn't just a formality. It's a sworn statement to a federally regulated lender that the $40,000 was a gift with no expectation of repayment. She signed it herself. Now she's presenting a second document, signed the same day, that says the opposite." She looked up. "Depending on how her attorney wants to play this, she either quietly withdraws the loan claim, or she forces a situation where 2 contradictory sworn statements with her signature end up in front of a compliance department with federal reporting obligations. Neither one goes well for her. Can she actually stop the refinance? No. She can slow it down, which she's already doing, and she can cost you the rate lock if we let the clock run out. She can't ultimately win, because the document that would make her right is the same document that makes her exposed." Patricia was already drafting as she talked, sentences clipped into the rhythm of someone who's written 1,000 of these letters. "I'll send her attorney a letter today laying out exactly that math. I'd expect a withdrawal within 72 hours, once someone besides Eleanor actually reads what she signed. And if she doesn't withdraw, then it stops being a family disagreement and starts being a paper trail with her name at the bottom of every page, in front of people whose entire job is reading paper trails for a living. That's not a fight she wants. It's just a fight she's currently too angry to see the shape of." I called Priya that afternoon to let her know a formal letter was coming, and asked carefully what would happen once it did. "Once I have documentation resolving the contradiction, a withdrawal, or a legal determination, I can release the hold and finish underwriting," Priya said. "I want to be clear, I wasn't doubting you personally. I've just seen enough files to know that she said doesn't hold up a mortgage. Paper does." I understood that better than most people could. It was more or less the exact sentence I'd have said myself on a slower week about a smaller problem. The 42 hours Patricia predicted turned into 4 days, which meant we were down to the last morning of our rate lock before anyone heard back. I didn't handle those 4 days particularly well, despite what I do for a living. I refreshed my email over lunch. I did math on $18,000 at 3 a.m. twice. Tyler barely spoke to his mother, and barely spoke to me either, caught in the particular silence of a man watching two people he loves prove things about each other that he doesn't want to be true. We ate dinner some nights standing at the counter, plates in hand, like sitting down together required an intimacy neither of us had the energy for. I drafted an email to Priya twice, just to ask for an update, and deleted it both times. I already knew there wasn't one, and asking again wouldn't move a compliance department any faster. It would just make me feel like I was doing something. On the fourth afternoon, my email pinged, then pinged again. Patricia, CCing me on a one-paragraph letter from Eleanor's attorney. It didn't apologize. It didn't have to. It stated, in the flat, careful language lawyers use when a client has told them to make an embarrassing problem disappear as quietly as possible, that Mrs. Ashford was withdrawing the promissory note referenced in her prior correspondence, and had no further claim against the property. I called Priya before I'd even finished reading it twice. That's exactly what I needed, she said. I could hear her typing already. I can release the hold this afternoon. We'll close by Friday, before the lock expires. I sat at our kitchen table, the actual table, in the actual condo, that was actually finally only going to have 2 names on it, and felt something in my chest unclench that had been clenched since a lock clicked shut on the other side of a hotel door. It wasn't triumph, exactly. It was closer to relief, which turned out to be a much quieter feeling than anyone tells you it's going to be. There was still one piece I wanted for myself, separate from the mortgage. I wanted to know exactly how long Eleanor had planned the honeymoon lockout, because spontaneous surprise and premeditated are very different stories, and I'd spent 3 years being told it was the first one. I called the Cortez Bay Resort and got Marcus Delgado, Director of Guest Relations, 11 years in hospitality, the same patient manager who'd later send me the printout that made my stomach drop. His voice had the particular calm of someone who'd spent a decade smoothing over other people's vacations gone wrong. He was cautious at first. Guest privacy wasn't something he could hand out over the phone. I understand, I said. I'm not asking about a stranger's stay. I'm asking about my own honeymoon suite, which someone accessed and altered without my authorization, on a card that wasn't hers. That part was documented too. The adjoining room's nightly rate, $410, charged to Tyler's card the same afternoon Eleanor checked in, under a system note that read approved. Family of primary guest. Marcus went quiet for a moment, then was more helpful than he had to be. I can tell you the adjoining room was requested by phone 2 weeks before your stay, using the name on your reservation. Our policy requires the primary guest's authorization for any room or billing change, which in this case didn't happen. That came from a call claiming to represent the groom's family. I'll be honest. That's the kind of note that shouldn't have gone through without a callback to confirm. I'm sorry it did. He refunded the $410 without my having to ask. It wasn't a large number, next to $18,000. It mattered anyway, the way small, clean acknowledgments sometimes matter more than large, complicated ones. Someone with no personal stake in my marriage looked at what had happened and simply said, that shouldn't have gone through. Tyler and I started seeing a therapist that same month, Dr. Angela Reyes, a licensed marriage and family therapist with 12 years in practice. Mostly, she told us in our first session, untangling grown children from their parents, which is different work than people expect. She never diagnosed Eleanor, she'd never met her, and said as much plainly. What she did was give Tyler language for a pattern he'd spent 18 years standing too close to see. Enmeshment, she called it, the blurred boundary between where a parent's grief is supposed to end and a child's separate adult life is supposed to begin. She was careful to separate that from villainy. Grief can build a very sincere trap, she said once. That doesn't mean you have to keep living in it just because she does. Tyler drove to his mother's house alone, the week after the loan closed. I don't know everything that was said. I wasn't there, and for once, neither of us thought I should be. I know he told her about the gift letter, and what Patricia had explained about federal lenders and sworn contradictions, and that pushing it any further could have become a real legal problem for her, not just an embarrassing one. I know he asked for the spare key back, and she gave it to him and cried, and he let her cry without immediately trying to fix it, which Dr. Reyes later told him was, in its own small way, the whole point. Eleanor didn't come to Thanksgiving that year. She sent a card instead, addressed to both of us, which felt less like an apology than a first, careful step toward learning what one might someday look like. It's been 8 months. The condo has 2 names on the title now, both of ours, no one else's. I keep the promissory note in an actual folder these days, not a note on my phone, filed behind a tab that just says closed, a professional habit, maybe the only useful thing that came out of watching my marriage almost get filed against. Eleanor still calls Tyler most Sundays. He still answers, but now he calls me right after, every single time, just to tell me how it went. 30 seconds, sometimes less. Fine, normal. She asked about your job. It's such a small thing. It's turned out to be the actual thing. Not that he stopped loving his mother, but that he stopped needing me to compete with her silently, in a room he never let me into. We had dinner with her once, in the spring, at a restaurant she didn't pick. She was quieter than I'd ever seen her, careful in a way that looked almost unfamiliar on her face. She asked me about work. I told her in general terms, about a case. Nothing about her. her. Nothing she'd recognize. Just the kind of case I handle every week, where two people who once loved each other need a stranger to read the fine print they never read to each other. She nodded like she understood exactly what I wasn't saying. I don't know if Eleanor and I will ever be close. I've stopped needing us to be. What I needed, it turned out, was much smaller and much more specific than closeness. A marriage with only 2 names on the paperwork, a husband who calls after the Sunday calls, and a mother-in-law who now at least asks before she assumes. Some bonds really don't expire. They just, eventually, have to make room for a third chair, or learn to sit somewhere else.